Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me. My name is Sean Reed, and I'm a doctoral candidate in the Department of Criminal Justice. And I'm here today to present some research that I've been working on with my RAMP mentee, Carmen, where we looked at domestic violence advocates' experiences and perceptions of training with their agencies. So when we mention domestic violence, we typically think of heterosexual cisgender women being abused. And that's because statistics show us that roughly 1 in 4 cis hetero women will experience domestic violence. And while that is a very high rate, recent research has shown us that the rate is actually much higher in the LGBTQ population. Specifically for the trans population, where it's estimated that roughly 1 in 2 trans-identified persons will experience domestic violence. Additionally, we know that a large number of cis hetero men experience DV as well, with a rate of 1 in 7. So because domestic violence is an issue that seems to transcend gender and sexual identity, there's a need to know how well prepared advocates are to serve these diverse victim populations. So for the current study, we aim to answer 2 questions. First, we want to identify which topics are covered during the onboarding received by advocates when they start their positions. In addition, we want to know what advocates perceive to be as shortcomings associated with those trainings. So to do this research, we conducted interviews with 12 domestic violence advocates from across 6 shelters across the United States. All interviews were conducted over Zoom, and data saturation was reached at about the 10th interview, but we conducted 2 more interviews to ensure data saturation. Advocates had been working in their positions for a wide range of time, with some advocates being with their agencies for 8 months to some being in them for over 15 years. And the majority of advocates identified as being white, heterosexual, cisgender females. So advocates noted that they received training on a number of different topics during their onboarding. And these trainings covered everything from technical skills associated with the job to correlates of domestic violence to different survivor populations. Specifically, 4 advocates said that they received training on heterosexual cisgender men who experience abuse. In addition, 7 advocates said that they received training on the LGBTQ population. So that sounds overtly positive, but they did note a number of shortcomings as well. And as you can see here, the shortcomings tend to be focused around identities of survivor populations. So specifically, 7 advocates said that they felt as though they did not receive enough training on cis hetero men, and almost all advocates said that they felt as though they needed more training on the LGBTQ population, with 2 mentioning the trans population specifically. And they outline these shortcomings in a number of representative quotes. As you can see here, Callie was in a leadership role in her agency, and she said that they did receive continual trainings on the LGBTQ population, but they were relatively broad and didn't give in-depth information that would really help advocates with their advocacy. Now, Astor was in more of a rural area, so it had a bit more of a homogenous population, but she said that because of that, her agency really needed to focus on these diverse survivor populations so that they could assist anyone that walked in the door. Now, Jack had a number of trans-identified clients on his caseload, but the issue was he said that when he started with his agency, he received no training on the trans population, so he didn't know how to serve them in regards to the violence they experience or what services were available to them. So to tie up our findings, it's clear that there's room for improvement when it comes to the onboarding processes of these agencies. Specifically, as mentioned by advocates, there's a need for greater training on cisgender heterosexual men who experience domestic violence, as well as the LGBTQ population, with the trans population being mentioned specifically. And this aligns with how social policy has been focused in the U.S. Historically, it's focused on the experiences of heterosexual cisgender women, which aligns with these trainings. Note how when advocates talked about shortcomings, none of them said that they wished that they had more training on heterosexual cisgender women. So it shows that there's room for improvement here. But from a research standpoint, there's a number of different ways we could go. First, as I mentioned, our sample is relatively homogeneous. It was primarily white, heterosexual, cisgender women. And so greater diversity in interview populations may lead to different perceptions of training efficacy. Further, there's a need to better understand the training process. So I believe that interviews or focus groups with training directors could help us understand how these trainings are developed and the content that's included within them. And then finally, all of these interviews were retrospective, so it's important to conduct a grounded theory study with these agencies outlining their training processes. I'd like to thank you for joining me today. We're very excited to share this research with you. Have a great day.